Celtic fans, welcome to another edition of Classic Celtics, and this is going to be
Here we go, Celtics. Here we go.
And like I said,
here we go, Celtics. Here we go. It's like I'm riding the red line from Porter Square through Harvard Square, down across the river, get on the green line, go to North Station, which they have since named Red Auerbach Station, go upstairs into the temple of life, where the celebration of all good things take place, and to be here with the Celtic Nation celebrating the wonders of nature, the wonders of everything good. I am the luckiest guy in the world. Here we go, Celtics. Here we go. I'd be on those trains going to the games, and the fans just packed in. You couldn't even move, but the fans would be shaking the train, pounding on the roof, pounding on the walls. Here we go, Celtics. Here we go. I am ready to go.
Bill, Bill, this is going into Game 6. This is a title clinching day. Was the train ride different that day?
No.
It was the same. So your life. So for 41 games, that's just your life. People, here we go, Celtics on Game 65.
Every game. It was amazing. The culture that Red Auerbach had built. Now, he had Jan Volk doing all the nuts and bolts and all the grittiness. He's got all the brilliant guys working in the family atmosphere of what the Celtics were. But ultimately, it comes back to Red Auerbach, as great a leader as I've ever been associated with. And Red's kindness, his generosity, his patience, his willingness to take a risk on allowing me to be on the team. Oh my gosh, my physical at Mass General Hospital at the east end of Storrow Drive. What a scene that ever was. But I did get on the team, and only two guys left really from those days. That was 35 years ago when the season started. But Jeff Twist, still running the show in PR and communications, and then Danny Ainge. And how Danny Ainge is not in the Basketball Hall of Fame is just beyond me. I'm a little embarrassed, Brian, that you wore his number. That number.
Listen, Bill, I'm with you, but he begged me to do it. I told him I thought your jersey should be in the rafters, but he was like, Scal, it'd be an honor for me for you to wear the jersey. So what am I supposed to say at that point, Bill?
Had he seen you play before he said that?
You should have told him. You've seen me play plenty of times.
Well, I love your game, Brian, but Danny's game was different. Danny's game, he was a lead player who took a subservient role. And that's what makes great teams work.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that. Bill, you've been an MVP. You won a title on a team that you were the main guy. How hard was it being a role player on this team?
Not at all. I played to win. Bill Russell, my favorite player ever, on and off the court. And everything he did was to help the team win. And it didn't matter what he had to do. One of the elements of leadership that come into play that I learned from Bill Russell, do what others can't and won't do. And here was Bill looking around. He had all these phenomenal players, guys who could score, guys who could run, guys who could defend on the perimeter. He had Sam and KC and Sharman and Kuz and Satch and Havlicek and Heinsohn and Frank Ramsey and all these great players, Wayne Embry. And then he had Willie Knowles and just a spectacular roster of guys, but they didn't have the person who could dominate the middle and who could control the action without ever having the ball. And so that's what Bill Russell did. Here was a guy 15 years on the intergalactic stage of basketball, and he completely changed everything, the way we think, the way we act, the way we behave, the way we perceive, the way we dream, and he never had the ball. It always amazes me when these guys say, I don't know what my role is. Your role is to make a shot, guard somebody, and get a rebound. And that's what Bill Russell did all the time.
You know, you played 80 games this year. So of all those years of the injuries and missing games and all that stuff, what happened this year? What was it?
Oh, it was a completely different role. I was only playing a few minutes a game. I mean, my basic role was to tell Larry what the schedule was and to make sure that he knew what time the game started. Because while we had spectacular players on the team all throughout, Danny, DJ, Chief, who was the foundational pillar, and please bring me back to Chief here, but let's just get through the rest of them. And then we had Scotty Wedman, who often was the second best player in the world and could never get in the game. And then we had Rick Carlisle, Jerry Seasting, Greg Kite, David Thirdkill, Sam Vincent. And while we had all those guys, what we really had, we had a coach who we loved, and then we had Larry and we had Kevin. And nobody else had anybody like those two guys. They were just so remarkable in everything, not only their play, but their personalities as well. And their personalities were so divergent, completely diametrically opposite personalities. But when you love your coach, and we had a brilliant coach in Casey Jones, and we would do anything for that guy. And the way that he treated us as men. He knew what it took to get the job done. Motivation was never a problem for our team. Our team's challenges were to stay focused, because we could win in any type of game. We could win in a slow down game where we could just grind it out and the other team didn't want to run. If they wanted to get going up and down, watch out. If they wanted to play a post-up game, they wanted to play a perimeter game, whatever they wanted to do was fine with us. We basically ignored any of them and all of them. And then the shoot-around practices, those were maybe 13 years into the evolution of shoot-arounds. And I don't get to go to NBA shoot-arounds these days, but our Boston Celtics shoot-around lasted 8 minutes. And the second that Casey Jones started talking about the other team, Larry would just pipe up and say, okay, that's enough of that. Let's start working on our shots. And so
that's interesting, because you guys had a chance to close them out in Game 5, and a fight broke out. That was all the talk going into Game 6.
We got pushed
did that
around,
distract you guys at all?
Brian, we got pushed around. You're always distracted. And Chief, who was phenomenal. I used to, I loved Robert Parrish and what he meant to that team. Because Robert Parrish did all the work, the foundational pillar that he was. It allowed Larry and Kevin to do all the wild stuff on the fringes, because they knew that Chief would hold it all down. And I sat next to Chief in the locker room every single day. And he would always look at me as he's reading his fan mail. And the fans, they love the Chief. And so he would always look at me after reading a particularly inspiring and interesting piece of fan mail. He would always say, Bill, watch out for the temptations in life.
Okay, so Bill, riding the subway or the train into North Station, Red Auerbach Station now, getting ready to play in Game 6. This is a title-clinching game for maybe one of the greatest teams to ever play. This is Celtics, Rockets, Game 6 of the NBA Finals.
So the lead up to the game, we had got pushed around in Game 5. Game 3 we should have had. Went right down to the final play. They made the play. We did not. Game 4, Larry made some spectacular plays. We got the advantage to go up 3-1. When you're up 3-1 and you have a great team, you know you're going to win. We got pushed around in Game 5. So Game 6, the normal frivolity, the normal joyous outburst, and the constant yakking and communication and trash talking led by Kevin and Danny. I mean, they were the young guys, real young guys, who were just constantly yapping all the time. But everybody was really quiet. The whole plane ride home, we could not land and get out of the regular terminals at Logan Airport because so many fans had stormed the airport welcoming us home. They had watched the game and they knew that we had been pushed around and they were coming to show their support. We had to be taken to a remote terminal and bust home and then we had practice the next day on Saturday at the Garden. It was a very quiet, very serious practice, very little teamwork, very little running. Physical fitness was never our problem. And so then we're just totally getting into it. And then they call us Saturday night before the championship game and they say, hey, there's no way that you guys are going to be able to drive to the Garden yourselves. So we had to meet over at Hellenic College and we'll bus you in from there because the crowd was already assembling outside the Garden. And so we get into the game and Larry's out doing his pregame warm-up and we're all in the locker room stretching and working it out. And we just can't wait. It's the moment before the moment of truth and what you live for in that locker room with the guys coming together with a collective sense of effort and purpose. And then Larry comes into the locker room and he looks at us all, and he rarely said anything collectively to the team. But he looked at us all and gathered all our attention. He says, guys, I was just out there in the crowd. It's an hour and a half before game time, and the crowd is already in, and they're ready. And right now, they want the blood of the Houston Rockets. But I'm telling you right now that if we don't deliver today, they're going to want our blood. Now, let's get going. Who's coming with me? And then Larry went out and just played his self-proclaimed greatest game that he ever played. And it was spectacular, because in a game of a lot of winners of the genetic lottery, I mean, you had Akeem, you had Ralph, who were just brilliant, just getting started in their careers. You had Kevin McHale, you had the Chief, and here was Larry. Larry got every rebound. Larry made every steal. He made every pass. He just literally did everything and made the rest of the world seem inconsequential. Larry Bird, the greatest player I ever played with by far.
Bill, you came in the first quarter, made an impact right away. What was this game feeling like when you were out there?
I stunk it up. It was one of the worst performances of my career. Larry had to call a timeout because Akeem had stolen the ball from me a bunch of times. And we had a big lead. Larry and Kevin were playing great. And then Akeem just started stealing the ball from me, and I was just bobbling everything. And Larry calls timeout, and he walks over to Casey Jones and says, Casey, you got one choice. You can either take me out or you can take Walton out right now. Casey Jones, he did the right thing and took me out. But the team, everybody else was playing great. And it was important to realize that there's nothing more meaningless than the halftime score of a game than the final score of an exhibition game. This was the championship game. And so the scene and the sense in the locker room was, okay, we're right there. Now, one of the things that the Celtics were brilliant about, because in the Garden, there was no air conditioning. And some days it was really, really, really hot, which most basketball players love, because that's how you grow up playing, and with no air conditioning. And so a lot of times we would put on completely fresh clothes. We'd come in, strip down immediately, everything, cut the tape off, socks, shoes, everything, towel off as much as you could. And then Wayne and Corky, they would bring completely fresh gear, all clothes. Ray Melchiori taping everybody up one more time. And then we go out there, and Casey Jones, he was always brilliant. He had the sense of the pulse of the team, and he knew exactly what it took. And Larry was so on fire. Kevin was just right behind him. Everybody was rolling. And we knew that crowd, that Celtic crowd, man, it was incredible, because they were so on Ralph. And there was this one elderly woman who was maybe 5 feet tall and maybe weighed 80 pounds. And she had a front row courtside seat, and she brought a sign that was bigger than she was. And she said, "Hey, Ralph." And she's referring to the big fight with Jerry Seasting, who was a little tiny guy himself. And she goes, "Hey, Ralph, I'm 5 feet tall and 92 years old. You want to fight me too?" And this lady just stood in the front on the edge of the court. She never sat down. She just yelled and screamed at Ralph the whole time. And Kevin, who just ate all that stuff up, Kevin proceeded to just absolutely destroy Ralph Sampson.
Was there any talk that Kevin wouldn't dominate this matchup at the time?
Kevin dominated everybody he ever played against. Kevin McHale was the second greatest low post player I ever played against. We called him Frankenstein because of his unique physical capabilities. Kevin could stand up, erect as can be at 6'10", dangle his arms, and scratch his shins without bending over. And then Kevin, when he needed his foot operated on and he needed a screw put into his foot, they just took the screw right out of his neck and they put it into his foot. So here was Kevin, this most unique player and a remarkably spectacular human being and personality who just loved torching people and never let people forget that he was in control. And he would be taunting the other guy who was having to guard him, the whole other front line. You know, there's nothing you can do to stop me. I've got you in the torture chamber. And if I'm kind, I will let you survive this evening. But Kevin was just, he was intent on just being fantastic and brilliant, and he was. And he could do everything. Kevin McHale defined competitive greatness, which was be at your best when your best is needed. And the fact that we had two of those guys, Larry and Kevin, who alternated just going back and forth. And when you have a team, a real team, that enjoys other people's success, and that you encourage someone to be great. And it's always bothered me when I see the teams that are just bereft of selfishness and bereft of individual agendas and egos out of control. I mean, that would be like those of us sitting on the bench, or Chief Danny and DJ sitting there saying, gosh, I hope that Larry or Kevin have a bad game tonight so that I can be the star. There was none of that stuff on our team. It was like, come on, somebody's hot. He's leading for a while. He'll wear out, and then it'll be my turn. And so it was just this sense of we were there. We took the momentary break, because while 15 minutes to the fans seems like an eternity, to the players, that's just a blink of the eye, because you got to get so much done. You've got to rehydrate, you got to dry off, you got to compose, and then you got to come out, because when they put that ball up for the third quarter in a big historic game, that is what you live for more than anything else in the world of competitive basketball, because you know you're only going to have great referees. They've seen everybody play. The referees, as the series goes on, play gets rougher and rougher, and you know that you've got to bring it, and there's nothing that's going to stop you. And we knew that our fans would not ever let us quit. What remarkable human beings in that Celtic nation. Here we go, Celtics. Here we go. And Casey Jones, who would just be up there so calm, so poised, who had been there so many times. And he just acted like, okay, we've done this before. We're going to get this job done. And the way he breathed life into us. And then Red would be sitting back. He would be there on the sideline, never really saying anything, but have a cigar, just taking a big giant drag, and then exhaling, and the green smoke that would come out with shamrocks and leprechauns. And it was just absolutely spectacular. And what a scene it was. And the pressure of, okay, we got 24 minutes. There's 24 minutes to history. And there was never any doubt in our locker room that wasn't going to get done. Because
any more words from Larry? You said Larry talked before game. Anything said at all?
No. Larry did not want halftime. Larry did not want timeouts. Larry did not want days off between the games. He wanted 7 straight days of basketball. And the first team to win 4, that's fine. He was not into waiting around. He was certainly not into waiting around for any of his teammates. He was not waiting around for the coach, not waiting around for the television schedule. Larry, he was ready to play and ready to deliver. And did he ever? The way he was making threes. One of the things that he loved to do is without the ball, moving off the double down screens by Chief on one side, Kevin on the other, and Larry is moving around. Danny is trying to find a place to create some space on the wing, but then DJ would have the ball up on top. And then Larry would be moving back and forth, and then DJ would just whip that ball right by the ear of his defender, right by the ear of Larry's defender. Larry could catch it and make a layup. Or when that play didn't work, then they'd give it to Larry in the isolation on the wing, 18 to 20 feet away. And Larry's shooting range was indescribable. I mean, he could make it from half court regularly whenever he wanted to. And so he would post up about 18, 20 feet away, and he'd get the ball, and poor Rodney McRae or whoever they would have on it, Robert Reed. I mean, I'm sure they tried Ralph and Akeem on him. It didn't matter. He could have put all 5 guys on him, and they couldn't stop it. And so there was a situation where Larry didn't get the ball, and then he'd be looking for his play, and then he would fake a pass. A really good ball fake, and sometimes put the ball right through his defender's arms, who was playing the defense, and then the defender would turn around and look who Larry had passed it to, and then Larry would just smile, wink, and then bring it right back into his shooting touch and just put it right in their face. Larry.
Bill, did you notice all this right from day one of training camp, that this was like, whoa, this is a different level of a team, this is a different level of a group, and Larry is just a different animal?
Yes, because when you only play against somebody, when you only watch them on television, you are aware that they're really, really good. You have no idea how great the really great ones are. And Larry was the greatest that I ever played with. Kareem was the greatest I ever played against. Kevin was, right up there. Chief was fantastic. DJ incredible. Danny belongs in the Hall of Fame too. But when you watched Larry Bird every single day, the way he came out, the way he came to work, the raw strength and the power and the ability to just snatch the ball out of the crowd. He was unparalleled. And the only guy I ever saw do things that way was Wilt Chamberlain. Wilt and Larry, strongest hands in the mix in the scrum of pulling that ball away. But with all of Larry's great physical skills, and his physical skills were not so much running fast or jumping high. That was not his game. He was so strong that the size of his wrists but his brain, just super smart, his analytical ability to figure out what was going to work, when it was going to work, how it was going to work, and then the fact that his body was able to just keep carrying him in the way, and how much he worked at being great, how much he worked at having his level of physical fitness, because he had other guys who could do the job, but he made the commitment and the determination. I'm going to sacrifice everything. I'm going to give my life. I'm going to give my body to the Boston Celtics, and we're going to do everything we can to get it done each and every day. Larry Bird. Oh my gosh! And then the second half started, and it was just phenomenal because he just kept going. And then he got in such a zone that he was getting the offensive rebounds. And instead of putting it right back up, which he could have easily done, he would dribble out to the three-point line. And then without even looking, he would just throw it back up there and then run down the court with his arms in the air and his finger pointed up and say, "We're number one." And the Celtic crowd is just saying, "Here we go, Celtics. Here we go." It was absolutely fantastic. We loved every minute of it. I just wish it could have lasted forever. Down the stretch of the season, we were a very close team, and every night after the games, we were out together, usually at the Scotch and Sirloin. And one night we were sitting around very late and having a really good time after another hapless foe was just vanquished into the nothingness of the desert. And somebody came up with a really good idea. "Hey guys, we're really close. We're really close to the championship here. How about we make a vow right now, right here and now amongst ourselves, that nobody will take another drink until we win the championship." And everybody goes, yeah, I'll drink to that. And then Kevin, after about a 30-second pause of everybody saying, yeah, this is great, Kevin said, "Well, we're going to win the championship this year, aren't we?" And we did. And so as the game came to a glorious conclusion there in Boston, it was fantastic, the spirit, the happiness. With 3 or 4 minutes to go in the game, still to play, the crowd was already coming onto the court. The Celtic crowd is such an amazing spectacle. I've played with some great crowds in my history before, UCLA, the Portland Trail Blazers, the Grateful Dead, and the Boston Celtics. But this Celtic crowd, they were literally standing on the edge of the court with the last 5 minutes of the game. And so the police came to Red and came to Casey Jones and said, "Look, we have to get the players off the court." And Red looked at the clock, and Casey, well, there's still 4 minutes to go, however many there were. And the police said, "We have to do it for the players' safety." And so they took about 6 or 7 of them. They left 5 guys out there. So poor Greg Kite and David Thurkill and Sam Vincent. It was probably Rick Carlisle. I can't remember who the 5th guy they had. If we even had 5, it didn't matter because the game was in such a hand. And it was incredible. We got in the locker room, and Brent Musburger and Pat O'Brien come in, and they're doing all the interviews and presenting the championship trophy to the Celtics and the most valuable player to Larry Bird. And it was just all a wonderful time. And then at the end, because we had not been able to drive to the Boston Garden that day because of the crowd outside before the game, there was even worse after. So we're leaving on the bus. And oh, what a scene that was, because everybody was super, super happy. And Red was sitting in his front seat and smoking his cigar. And Kevin had really opened up with his trash talking there. And he left no one unscathed in that conversation. But then the bus, it took us all over to Casey Jones's restaurant. Casey Jones had a restaurant of his own out there on Route 9. And it was just a fantastic time. And I think I woke up about 3 days later, and that's all I remember.
Bill, was there talk of you guys being the greatest team ever? Did you guys ever have that conversation during the season, or even, like, say, the 5 days after you won the championship?
We had a great team, and we loved each other, and we loved the way we played, and we knew we could get the job done. And so we'll take our chances.
Yeah.
We'll take our chances anywhere, against anybody, anytime. Yeah. We had it all. We had size, strength, power, finesse, skill, discipline, talent, and at the end of the day, we had Red Auerbach, Casey Jones, Larry Bird, and Kevin McHale, and nobody else did.
You guys disappointed it wasn't the Lakers?
You can't pick your opponents, Brian.
Yeah.
We were there. We were ready for anybody. And don't undersell the Houston Rockets. Yes, they were young, but they had two Hall of Famers. They had Bill Fitch, who had been the Celtic coach, and there was a lot of currents about that. But between Ralph Sampson, and this was before Ralph had gotten hurt, and this was Akeem, who ended up being one of the smallest handful of the greatest centers ever, and the best international player of all time, and just a remarkable player and human being. And they had good players, but we had Larry Bird and we had Kevin McHale, and they didn't. And it was fantastic because every night, all week long, nobody really lived in Boston during the off season. Everybody went home to their own hometowns where they lived at those days. And so, but every night we were there for about a week, a little bit more than a week before everybody left. And so every day there'd be some celebration. The official parade, which was a scene in and of itself. Oh my gosh, you talk about getting into the Grateful Dead parking lots. That was wild as can be. And I remember they kept throwing everything up into the big armored assault vehicles that we were carried around the streets of Boston in, and just millions and millions of people. And so they were throwing drinks and beers and clothes and undergarments. I mean, it was wild. And then we'd throw it back and then have the time of our life. And then somebody throws me up a beer, and I get it, and I pound down the beer, and little Jan Volk comes up to me, and I'm standing there with Larry and Kevin and Chief, and we're just having the time of our life. And Jan Volk, he looks at me and he says, Bill, I just really don't think that this is the place and time to be celebrating like this. And I looked at him and I said, Jan, this is what I live for. And I took the beer and I poured it on the top of his head. And so it was a moment where the city of Cambridge had this incredible honor and ceremony for us, because I think at the time I had been the first professional athlete to live in the city of Cambridge, and we absolutely loved it there. But going with a big military honor guard, and it was just fantastic. And this happened throughout the city all week long. And then every night at midnight, we would all meet at Larry's house. And we'd sit around Larry's kitchen table, and just there was a lot of trash talk and a lot of fun in the celebration.
You ever been on any team that was as close as you guys?
Every championship team is close. The Grateful Dead is close. And the UCLA Bruins, the Portland Trailblazers. Whenever you're part of something really special, it changes your life. And I remember when I was 15 years old, I was really fortunate in my life, Brian, in that I grew up in the culture of the Boston Celtics and the UCLA Bruins with Red Auerbach and John Wooden. And then when I was 15, all my coaches and all my teachers were disciples of the Celtics, UCLA, John Wooden, Red Auerbach. And so that was a normal transition for me. I thought the whole rest of the world was like that. It wasn't until I joined the NBA, an expansion team, the Portland Trailblazers in 1974, that I realized, what a big mistake I had made in my life, and not being aware that not everybody had the same opportunity opportunities and privileges that I had, it was super fun. And the way that Red made it fun, we could not wait to get there every single day. One of the things that Casey Jones, who he loved to do this, was he would always look for ways to call practice off. We'd get there, we'd be ready to go. And first of all, you have to understand that with the first string, which was Larry, Kevin, Chief, Danny, and DJ, the white team, because they had the white jerseys all the time. And we were the green team of Jerry and Rick and Scotty and Greg and me. And we were the green team. Now, we called the white team the stat team because that's all they were interested in. But you have to realize that while the practices were incredibly competitive and very spirited, the white team, the first string, they were playing 40 to 45 minutes a game. And so they were not taking our practices against the second string very seriously. But, oh, man, did we ever have fun. And Casey Jones was always looking for a way to call off practice once we got there. And, get us up, get us moving. They say, oh, okay, let's just go out to lunch, whatever. And but Larry would do whatever it took to ensure that practice would get called off, like make the half-court shot or, bank it in from three-quarters court, whatever it was. And then Casey just saying, hey, no practice today. And then we'd all just say, oh, come on, Casey, let us practice, man. Let us go. Let us run. Say, oh, okay, let's practice. Then our practices were just great. We do some warm-up drills. We play some shooting contests. We played a 3-on-2 conditioner, and then let's get scrimmaging. This was a veteran team. With guys who were incredibly mature and determined and dedicated and committed to the cause, and the cause was the Celtic Nation. Here we go, Celtics. Here we go. And the championship celebration continues to this very day.
Well said, Bill. Bill, I really appreciate you stopping by. Be safe during this crazy time out there. Like you said, health over everything. I love your priorities here. Thanks for stopping by and giving us the stories of this 86 team and in particular this game.
We will get by. We will survive. We are alive. Shine on, heal on, play on, Celtics on, carry on. I love Brian Scalabrine. I can't believe Danny Ainge is not in the Hall of Fame. I can't believe that Danny wanted you to wear his number. I want to check that accuracy.
Text him. It's true. It's true. Bill, I wouldn't lie to you, Bill. You're my guy from the start. I would not lie to you.
Give me his number. We love you, Brian. Go Celtics, go.
All right.
Thanks for my life.
Thanks a lot, Bill.